Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 15 of Ultimate Exotics, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of supercars, the top level performance vehicles that you can buy on the road, pretty much. And this has been a week which has featured two of my favourite vehicles, the Tesla Model S yesterday, and today my favourite car of all time, the Cizeta Moroder V16T, commonly just known as the Cizeta V16T. On Gran Turismo, which, as far as I'm aware, is the only game that this car is featured on, it's not a particularly popular car, or at least it doesn't get that much use by most people, especially not for competition. Pretty much all the people that I've seen using this car have been using it for just driving, or just cruising with, rather than racing. Now, I love this car. As I said, it's my favourite car of all time. I still have to be objective, of course, about the car, as I am with all of my reviews, but the reason why I love the car so much is because of the reason why they made it. They didn't make it to set any records. They didn't make it to go around a track in a certain time, or to sell thousands of them, or to win any awards. They just made it because they could, and to be, in effect, a musical instrument with a steering wheel. It has one of the most unique engines ever fitted to a vehicle, a 6-litre naturally aspirated V16 engine, mounted transversely, interestingly enough, which explains why the car is so wide at the rear. And the engine is made from two Lamborghini Huracan engines put together. So a pretty crazy motor. Now, visually, many people mistake this car for a Lamborghini Diablo when you bring it out in public lobbies. And that's actually really understandable, because for one thing, and some people do know this, but for one thing, it was designed by the same guy as the Lamborghini Diablo, Gandini. But what even less people realise is that not only was this designed by the same guy as the Diablo, but technically speaking, this is the Diablo, because the actual design that Lamborghini used was a reworked version of this design. So technically, the Cizeta is more of a Diablo than the Diablo is, which is interesting because I'm not a fan of the Diablo at all, but for some reason this car just ticks all the boxes for me. I love the look of it. It's different enough from the Diablo to be recognisable, especially if you put the two next to each other. They're a lot more different than many people think. And I just love the thing. It sounds like nothing else on the road. There are some great videos on YouTube of people starting them up. I believe only 9 were made, so they're pretty rare. And they are very, very expensive, both in real life and on the game. Interestingly enough, you can actually still buy this car brand new today in either hardtop or open top forms for, last time I checked, around $700,000. A used one will still cost you that though, because this car is pretty old now. It's the same age as me. It's from 1994. So as far as supercars go, it's pretty long in the tooth. It comes from a time when supercars were completely different to what they are today. It was much more just about straight line brute force and setting records, which that may sound pretty similar to today, but it really was much more so back then. Cars like the Diablo were infamous for being so difficult to drive, and supercars have come on such a long way since then, which is one of the reasons why the McLaren F1 stood out so much back then, because it was so far ahead of its time. Now, this car does have a lot to offer, but in a very specific way, because as I said, it's not designed to be a competition vehicle in any sense. There never was a Cizeta race car, not even as a prototype. It's just not designed for that. So although you can race it, it's not really the best vehicle for racing. It's kind of like trying to take a Rolls Royce in a rally. It can do it, but why would you want to? Now, as far as the engine goes, despite not having a turbo or a supercharger to help it, it still puts out a huge 786 horsepower and 666 pound-feet of torque. It's a reasonably heavy car, not surprising for its age, at 1,318 kilos. Power to weight ratio is just under 600 horsepower per tonne, fully tuned of course. And the PP is a pretty reasonable actually, 605, nowhere near as high as many of the other supercars in the game. The price, as I said, is high in real life, and that is also carried over to the game at just under 640,000 credits, which seems about appropriate for this car really. Now incidentally, I believe if I remember correctly, you can win this in career mode, so technically you don't have to buy it at all, if I remember rightly. But as I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using this as a race car, because although it's certainly fast, the top speed is around 270 under its own power, the acceleration is very strong, again for its power and for a naturally aspirated vehicle. But around the track, well, it's extremely wide, as we already said, heavier than some other supercars, and the handling is, not strictly speaking bad, but it does much prefer to cruise rather than to be really pushed hard around corners. It's capable of doing so, but it's just not the best choice for that kind of thing. So if you don't own one and you're considering buying one, it depends what kind of person you are. If you like just driving for the fun of it, then I would recommend it. If you're looking specifically for a competition vehicle, I probably wouldn't. So, that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.